What's up, guys? Welcome into All Tied Up. Chris Marler, Clint Lamb. Tough, tough couple of days. Tough way to end 2024 and start 2025. We will get into the Bama game. I feel like I owe everybody an apology. I might owe some people some money about how Michigan was going to be in that game and whether or not they'd be able to score against Alabama. And lo and behold, obviously, see just a miserable end to the 2024 season. Clint, how are you?
First of all, you didn't do you saying Michigan's offense would have a pretty rough time scoring against Alabama's defense was actually spot on analysis. We just didn't take into account interceptions, fumbles.
Yeah.
When you're starting in plus territory, your first 3 drives, maybe 4. I think it was first 3. Next thing you know, you're down 16 points. So can't really put that on you. I'm doing fine. Had a little time to take a step back yesterday. Didn't do a whole lot as far as like watching the tape. Started watching some this morning.
Yeah.
I'll continue to watch stuff throughout today and tomorrow, and we'll have more detailed analysis on this game a little bit. But lots to talk about today, man.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. It's a frustrating way to end the season. It's a frustrating way to go into 2025, and I think it's because it's like this is you just there were no doubts that you were going to beat a Michigan team. Listen, not even a 7-5 Michigan team that played where they rallied the troops in Columbus. I'm talking about a 7-5 Michigan team that was without like several of they were without their best defensive player. They were without their best offensive player. They were without several other starters, and it reminded me a little bit of something like the anticipation wasn't the same. But remember in 2015, Bama Ole Miss, and you're in a revenge game. The game started at like 9 o'clock or something crazy, and you go into that game and you have 5 turnovers, 3 of them inside your own 25-yard line, and that's a recipe for getting beat. And they got beat. It kind of felt like that, but it was just like, I mean, like just at some point you've got to get out of your own way, and they just refuse to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of became a theme this year, and that's been, I think, the most frustrating part for fans. What do you attribute it to, Chris? If you had to guess, is it multiple things? Is it one thing that stands out above the rest? Like, what would you say is the culprit?
All right, so I'm not saying that this person is the culprit. Can I walk you through my like messed up ADD brain of how I thought about this afterwards? Because this is where I was with that, or this is where I was with it. Milroe's fall off in the last 3 games of the season, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Like the 10, you had 11 turnovers in your first 10 games. You had 10 in your last 3. That's unbelievable. And pick sixes, having him be in your own territory, giving a short field, like to a defense, it's got to be like gasping for breath and being like, there's only so much we can do, right? And so when he's in there and he's playing like that, by all means, my assumption was you got to take him out. You have to take him out if you want a chance at winning this game. But the other side of that is it's probably his last game, so you're in an awkward situation about whether or not you take him out. It is whether we want to get mad about it or not. It's an exhibition game. It's not a game that like there's stuff on the line. It would have been nice to have the 10 wins. It would have been nice to win. Anytime you take the field, I've said this since I was a kid. Anytime they're going to put that script A across the chest and they're going to go out in between white lines or on the hardwood or between, if you're standing in the batter's box 60 feet, 6 inches away from the pitcher, like anytime that happens, I want Bama to win. So I get all that. You want them to win. Pepper says hello. She's over here trying to get on some airtime. But then it's just an odd situation. It's like, do you take him out because you want him to be able to go off on his own accord? So that part was frustrating. And then at the end of the game, it's like, listen, I've defended Jalen Milroe more than anybody, and I think he's a great young man. He's a great kid, and I hate I hate the amount of hate that he's getting on social media. It's time to move on from him, I believe. And they just like you regressed at this season in general, but you especially late in the year. And then the other part of it too, Clint, that I kept going back to was like, dude, we all saw what was happening. We all saw what was happening. Yeah, like for Kalen DeBoer to go out there and say, "Well, I saw a kid that was fighting, and I'm not gonna take him out when I know he's fighting out there," and then just like then you start seeing the other stuff with the staggered legs versus like the legs together for run versus pass, and that's something people have been saying for a long time this season. Like if there's no self scouting involved, like I don't. It made me frustrated to really start to be a little bit concerned with was the coaching staff just kind of like, hey, let's just get through the season and then figure it out from there when we can like really go into a year with our own building our own brand and culture of what we want to do like from scratch, because this is what we have for right now, and this is what like it's just not how we would draw it up.
I said after the game, and a lot of fans don't agree. I understand that. I really try to understand things that I don't understand, if that makes any sense. Like I just looking at it on a surface level, I didn't understand at the time why they didn't pull Jalen. I thought during the Tennessee game, there was some moments where it's like you've got to go in a different direction right now.
Yeah.
And you can, Quinn Ewers got benched. They brought him back. And so it's not like you can't come back from that, but I think you've got to do something to either send a message, generate a spark. But at the same time, you're trying to understand why wouldn't you? And
yeah,
I think Kalen DeBoer and a lot of people, the coaching staff and everybody in that building, they have relationships. They're close with these people. They care about these people. So there's a more emotional element from we care about these people than from a fan's perspective. I know a lot of fans love Jalen Milroe. They love certain players, Jihad Campbell. Everybody loves Jihad Campbell. Everybody, most people love Malachi Moore. So I'm not saying that there's not an emotional connection or element between fan and player, but they don't know them on a personal level like coaches do. But on top of that, you're Kalen DeBoer. You're going from having never been in the South, Washington, Sioux Falls, Fresno State. It's like you're at places like that. You come to Alabama.
I mean, Fresno State is the Shreveport of California, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely different place, being out there than it is being in the South. You get to Alabama, and it's like Jalen Milroe just finished number 6 in the Heisman. He had
highest returning one out of any.
Absolutely. You've got a guy who was kind of already established as a leader. Whether we don't know what was true and what wasn't true from last year, but it's almost like Nick Saban kind of had a problem benching him too. Like there was rumors about what happened in the USF game, and guys weren't happy about it. All these different things, and so you come in as a guy who's kind of the outsider, and you're now trying to navigate. Hey, you need to tread lightly as far as the moves that you're willing to make. I still think that he should have stepped up and made that move, but it's like you said, it's his last game. You just don't want that storyline to be, a guy who has given a lot. Has it been enough in the eyes of fans? A lot of fans, no. They feel like somehow he should have dug in, done more, or they should have went in a different direction. But he has given the university a lot. He's really tried his absolute best. And so, do you bench that guy and it's probably his last ever game for your program? Does that become the narrative or the story, the legacy of Jalen Milroe? I don't know, but I will say it's not as easy or cut as dry as people want to make it out to be.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, man. I think it's like, I think if any rational person, like maybe DeBoer is just a really good players coach is just not going to throw anybody under the bus. Maybe he is not Hugh Freeze. I mean, Hugh Freeze would have had his ass under a bus, getting run over by tires forward and backwards over and over again since October. Like that's the kind of coach he has been with his quarterbacks. Like maybe that's part of it with DeBoer. The other thing though is like, I think that what worries me is that we all just kind of thought, with good reason, we all just kind of thought as fans and people watching it and like in media, we're just like, surely they will be up enough of this horrible Michigan team that cannot score on anyone and is so bad and missing all these starters. Surely they'll be up enough where they can take him out and he can have his time in the sun and get a hug from the coach and all that. And it didn't happen, and a lot of it didn't happen because of Jalen Milroe, like and Caden Proctor a little bit with some of like the and Elijah Pritchett some of the line play, but like at some point it's like, why didn't you put them in a position to get there? Like what what do you? It just, there's just so much concern for me that in 2 of the last 3 games you were an overwhelming favorite, and upsets happen, but you were an overwhelming favorite. And you came out there and got embarrassed.
And that's it. I mentioned this to Mick the other night on the postgame show, or other day. I guess it was day. The worst good teams that you played, you lost to. And what I mean by that is you're not going to include the USFs, the Western Kentuckys, the Mercers. But what I mean is like, okay, Vanderbilt 6-6, finished 7-6. Oklahoma 6-7, but they're an SEC program. You're going to Norman. That's a lot tougher than like, going to Western Kentucky or something. You play a 7-5 Michigan team that's now 8-5, and you're playing them in a bowl game that's quite a far way away from Ann Arbor. It's like all these like kind of good. They're like good teams. It's like you can't just you're not going to put them in the same breath as like Michigan and Western Kentucky or Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky or whatever, but they're still like very middle of the road, very mediocre teams. The good, bad teams that they played, they lost to. And it's like that to me, it's like, okay, you can play very poorly against Western Kentucky, but you're probably still going to win that football game just because you're that much more talented. Mercer, same thing. USF, you also against USF, I mean, it's late in that game and you're only
up by 5 with 6 minutes to go.
Yeah. And so like it's because USF was a bowl eligible team and they were pretty good. So was Western Kentucky. So, I mean, my point though is that anytime they played like a team that could even remotely take advantage of the mistakes that they were making, they played super poorly and they lost to those teams. A lot of people thought South Carolina was another one of those games. South Carolina ended up being much better than, it was viewed at the time that Alabama only won that game by 2 points. But it's just, there was some massive problems. And I do think it goes beyond Milroe, but I do think a lot of it has been a result of Milroe. And I hate to say that, but the limitations that you're working around with him, just the limited playbook. Like when you have a team that has the ability, you're not going to run the football on us. You might get, a play here or a play there, but consistently being able to grind clock, grind out long drives, do that whole thing, which is kind of one of the big points of running the football. It's taking the defense's will away where you're just hammering it down their throats. Like you're not going to be able to do that against Oklahoma. You're not going to be able to do that against Michigan. And through that, when defenses were able to do that, it really Jalen in the offense, and that includes Nick Sheridan, they didn't really know how to adjust.
No, I will tell you this too. I was talking to my friend Sierra about this, who's lovely on Twitter, and she's a big Bama fan. And like we've like jokingly talked about how just like we like president of the Jalen Milroe fan club, like want the kid to succeed, like love the fact that he was like that Georgia game was awesome. Even the way he played against Vandy at times, like didn't feel like that was his fault. And then the Tennessee games, like why did you throw him? Why'd you drop back 49 times? Like that just, it seemed weird. Like it never just felt like there was a cohesiveness as to like, besides LSU, which against LSU, you were like, listen, they can't stop a running quarterback. We're going to run it down their throats. And they did. And then, after that, it just kind of felt like there's just so many weird things that they just did. Like the not incongruencies, but like the parallel or the like not being on the same page in terms of like remember the Tennessee game, it's like, well, they didn't run to a back on back-to-back plays for like 2 quarters of football or something crazy. It was like what are we doing? And it felt very much like they decided that they were going to shrink up their offensive like play calling package for Jalen Milroe but none of it was really creative. I don't know how much of that was on Jalen, to be honest, because it's like it felt a lot of it was trying to run the football. But here's the main thing I kept going back to, like even when I was talking to Sierra about this, was it felt, and I hate to say this, man, I hate to say this because I think Jalen's such a good kid. He looks broken out there. Like it's like you're missing guys that are so open. You're missing guys that are like they're calling up the plays. Like, did you see the play? I forgot where it was. We were going right to left, and I want to say it was like in the fourth quarter, and I think it resulted in an incomplete pass. But we were around midfield, and they dialed up a play where Jeremy Bernard came on like the second level and was dragging across the field. He's wide open, and he's in like the safety has had to take backside because there's somebody that's like going up the left flat or left like down left hash like on a go route. Then somebody else is coming across, I think like on a shorter route on the right side. But they had schemed up a position, a play where he was wide as open. It's the same play they ran against South Carolina to go the final score. Like Jeremy Bernard is streaking across the field wide open in between the linebacker and the safety, no one within 15 yards of him. And if you hit him, if you see him and hit him, he walks in. And he missed I don't know, he missed Jeremy Bernard a lot, like just a lot. And it was very concerning. And I think the last part of it too is that, dude, he just like, I played baseball all throughout college, like my whole life all throughout college. There are days, Clint, where I can wake up and hit. Like it doesn't matter what you were throwing. If you were like off speed fastball, like however fast you were throwing, like I can wake up and hit. Then there's other days where it's like, dude, I cannot. I'm not comfortable in the box. Like I'm overthinking everything. I can't. I'm not guessing the right pitch. Like I could not hit the broadside of a barn. And that's what the last three games looked like for Jalen Milroe. Everything seemed hesitant and unconfident, unsure of himself, and it was really tough to watch.
It looks difficult. You know, some guy like, different position, but you know, you watch Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State, and he just certain guys make the really hard stuff look super easy, and it almost looks not impressive because of how easy they make it look. But no one else can do what they're doing. Some people make the easy stuff look hard, and just watching Jalen Milroe at times, he got into a groove or a rut this year where he made the easy stuff look hard. And that's when, you know, you knew like, and here's what I'll say. We'll go ahead and start talking about this because this is such a big talking point, and it's the feet. And okay, how much is he telling defenses what's going on with that? Look, first of all, when it comes to film evaluation, don't know why, I've never paid super close attention to a quarterback stance. I watch the footwork post snap. Some of the stuff just makes sense. Hey, if you've got 1 foot drop back, if you're staggered, then, you know, it might be easier to do certain drops and things like that. Totally get it. But just, it wasn't until this was really brought to my attention that I had to go and watch specifically. There was nothing that I've been watching Milroe do this all year. So it was kind of difficult, you know, having to go back and look because, I wasn't going to look through every game. But here's what I seem
to
have. I will now, but it's just in these short amount of time, people are wanting answers, and I wanted to give them what I think is going on, and I'm going to continue to go back and watch more and just see. But it does. Okay, so I went and watched the 2022 Texas A&M game where he started, and he was pretty much even as far as, you know, you would parallel to the line of scrimmage. I would call it even. You know, most situations. Now, I think any quarterback or most quarterbacks, if you get into some of those obvious passing situations, they'll drop a foot, they'll stagger, because, you know, defenses already know, hey, it's 3rd and 9, you're throwing the football, you know, we're teeing off anyways. But it seemed like he was more even-footed. Then last year, from what I saw under Tommy Rees, it seemed like he was always staggered. And so I went back and watched several games I say several, 2 or 3 games, about 2.5 games. And that's what he seemed to be doing. Now, he could have done something different. Did he, you know, and when you're already staggered, I think that's the one that a lot of quarterbacks want to be. So if you're kind of being given that green light, you're just going to do that every time. You're not going to be even footed in many situations or any situation. So that's kind of why you only saw that this year. And you watch Michael Penix Jr. last year under Kalen DeBoer, he was an even footed guy. He was, like I said, there's certain situations, obvious passing, where it might look a little different, but 98% of the time, he's like an even-footed guy. And so, okay, it's like you start seeing Jalen this season, and he's even-footed again. And it's like, well, that makes sense based off of Kalen DeBoer and what he was asking Michael Penix to do. And so early in the year, you see like Georgia, he was even footed. He might have like a very slight stagger, and I mean very slight, but it was pretty much, it was, they would go empty. And when you go empty, it's like the defense knows quarterback runs coming or you're dropping back to pass. So you can even do it in those situations if you want to, if it's obvious passing once again. And then against like Auburn, that was another game I went and watched, Tennessee as well. He started staggering a little bit more in specific situations. And it felt like that when he knew a pass was coming, he had been taught to be an even-footed guy. And then as games are progressing or going on, it was never like he'd go into the game doing that. A lot of times at the beginning, he'd be an even-footed guy. But as the game's flowing and he's really thinking about a lot and dissecting a lot, he would start to stagger his feet in, situations where he was throwing the football. Maybe he wanted to get into his drop quicker. You saw it against Auburn. You saw it against Tennessee. And I do think watching it, the only time he would do that, because when it's a run play, it's easier from a footwork perspective for you to be even footed. So he could subconsciously, he would remind himself, if it's run, I'm even footed. But when it came to throwing the football, he wanted to give himself any sort of advantage, or he'd go back to what he was most comfortable doing. And, I don't know if that was intentional. Like he was coached a certain way and he's like, I'm just going to do it my way. I got to be honest. When I played linebacker in high school, our coach, didn't want our hands on our knees, in a stance at all. But I just felt more comfortable doing that. So sometimes I'd be like, screw it, I'm just going to put my hands on my knees. I don't care. Like, I don't think it's making – I'm watching college linebackers doing on Saturdays and NFL linebackers doing on Sundays. And you're telling me, you don't want our hands on our knees. It's like I disagreed with it, so I just did it my own way. I'd get in trouble when they noticed it on film and stuff. But is that what Jalen was doing? I don't know. But I will say in certain games, Oklahoma – Tennessee got to be this way. You would start to see him doing that, and it would seem to be a tell for what they were going to be doing. Now, how much can that help a defense? It's like, okay, it was never any like consistency to it, in the sense of he would go into a game being like even-footed. So it wasn't like you were telling your defense going in, but it might be something that from an in-game adjustment perspective, right, you would start to say, okay, he's starting to do it. And here's a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter if they know run or pass is coming. They still got to be able to stop it. I
don't love that.
That's one of the dumbest arguments I've heard against it. It's like, if that is the case, explain play action to me. Just tell me what the point of play action is. If really it doesn't matter that they know, hey, it's a run down, but we're actually going to throw you off. We're going to make you think we're running it, but we're really, we think that you think we're going to be running it, but really we're throwing it. It's like there's a reason for that. And if like you got a foot staggered, even when you're in play action or you're going to be play actioning, the defense is like, he's got a foot stagger. We think he's going to be throwing the football, and the play action means nothing. You're not getting the running backs to come up, so like to say that that's really irrelevant, it might not be as big of a problem as some people are making it out to be.
Right.
But as far as being a tell and giving the opposing defense an advantage in certain situations, I do think it kind of mattered.
That's what I was going to ask you, is because like I'm just thinking about angles and sight lines and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, are you able to see where his feet are in relevance to where like if you're a defensive end, are you can you see his feet well enough to, because what I didn't see from all of the things that I saw, like it's clearly a pattern, not discounting that at all. What I never saw once happen was anyone on the defense check out of something and be like, hey, like, now I know Bama fans are losing their minds, like looking at the TV screen, like knowing what was coming. But
I don't think it mattered from a play calling perspective. Right. I think it mattered from an individual perspective. That age old saying, I mean, they used it in the blind side. It's like, white knuckles means he's coming off the football. Right. Doing that whole thing. It's like, you're not telling, oh man, he's, his knuckles are doing this, guys. They're going to be doing this. Right. It's from an individual perspective. You're saying, okay, so if you're like an edge and you're watching Milroe's feet, you got a better angle of it out there on the outside, and you see him staggered. You're like, okay, it's 3rd and 5. I don't think they're going to be running the football. Or if it's, 3rd and 5 and he's got even feet, right, you're saying, okay, they could run it actually here. And so you're committed more to the run compared to, hey, I think they're throwing it here. Right. I'm going to pin my ears back, not really respect the run as much. Yeah. And, one thing, I went back and watched Mac Jones. Like, I just thought that, hey, let's look at a completely different quarterback. Because I watched Carson Beck. Carson Beck is a one-leg back every time. He's staggered always. Peyton Thorne is always staggered. Quinn Ewers, I also think he has this problem at times where he starts to become predictable with it because he does both. Mac Jones, he was more of an even guy, but he seemed to – I watched that national championship against Ohio State in 2021, and first of all, clinic by Steve Sarkisian. I love watching that game.
When
That's
he brought
just
Devontae in that orbit motion, my God.
Oh, brother. It just the play calling, that was that was incredible. But I'm watching him, and there's times where there's a lot of times where he's even footed and they're throwing the football. Like I said, that was kind of his go-to thing.
Right.
But you would see certain situations, in the obvious passing situations, he'll drop a foot and he'll go staggered. But you also saw him in certain instances where it was a 2nd and 8 or something, and he'd stagger a foot, and then he'd hand the football off. And it was almost like, I don't know this definitively, but it almost felt like he was trying to throw the defense off with that. Like he was switching up a little bit. They were throwing the football when he had even legs, and then he would stagger sometimes, and they'd run it. And it's like, I didn't, it just, there was never any sort of, you couldn't use anything against Mac Jones as far as him telling you his legs pre-snap what they were going to be doing. But it does seem that, like in some of these situations with Milroe, you did see, if you were looking for it, if you knew to look for it throughout the course of a game, if he started getting into that habit, you could say, okay, I can maybe get something on this. And even if it's like I go from being I think it's a 55% chance in my head, which is not exact percentages. No one's saying that to themselves, but I think it's more than likely they're going to, run the football here. But when I see that, it's like, well, now I'm about 75 or 80% sure when you are a lot more confident that they're going to be doing something, that does give you an advantage or even things up a little bit. Because one of the natural advantages of an offense is that you do know what's coming and the defense is more reactionary.
Well, let's also, I will call out what I think part of it is too. And it's not going to be a popular opinion, but I don't care because I have already made so many, dogs say hello. Made so many friends this year with my takes. If Jalen Milroe was completing 78% of his passes, and Jalen Milroe was throwing to Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith and John Mechie and all those guys, and putting up the best offense that we have seen, one of the best offenses we've seen in college football history, including the LSU team from the year before that Mac Jones had, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But
agreed.
When things are bad, it's easier to sit here and say, like, let's start really getting into it. And I'm not faulting Bama fans for that at all. I'm saying that, like, it's easy to start critiquing some of the other stuff that, like, not minutia, but stuff that's like, oh, and then this happened, because, like, you're already upset. Like, you're already upset about what's going on. The thing that I keep going back to is, if it's something that's like that basically giving away, I think from an athletic standpoint, it's like it's like when you're trying to get out of a rut, like in a swing, like in golf, or if I brought the baseball thing earlier. It's like you don't if you're having a hard time, like, bringing a club head to like even where you're making like ball striking like at like a consistent what do you call it, like consistent, like every single time, so the ball's not flying right, left, and it's just going straight, and you're hitting a consistent like what do you call it, swing path and all that kind of stuff. You start with your irons and like a wedge, and then you start working your way down to like the less forgiving clubs. But you start with the basics of like what you feel most comfortable with, and the things that, like, getting back to basics. It feels like from an athletic standpoint, Jalen Milroe was like, okay, like I have got to cut out as much extra shit as possible as to like what can cause an issue. That does not mean defending Jalen Milroe. It just feels like it's very clear that he was trying to put himself in the most basic, comfortable position, like each drop back, where he wasn't going to have another million things running through his mind. Because again, I just maintain the fact that I think his confidence is broken. Like his confidence just seems like the interception he threw, where he double clutched and then floated a ball out, and it was like these players aren't impervious to seeing what people are saying about him on social media, and it's you can have whatever opinion you want to take, but if you think that shit doesn't matter, it doesn't factor into someone's confidence. Clinton will tell you right now, there's most of the time I don't want to see the comments, because it's like it's social media and it's almost always negative. And like I'm sure that Jalen Milroe and players on that team, there's a lot of things that they probably heard or read that weren't super helpful for their confidence.
I will say, I know 100% fact there was a player last year who was very, very heavily criticized by fans, and I will not mention by name, that read the social media stuff, and it very much affected them. I had somebody very much in the know that
and they had a great season at Ohio State this year.
They had
and his sister owns a corgi.
I hate you a little bit. Just
why?
Because anyways,
no, I mean, like, I'm not. I wasn't trying to like diminish what you're saying. I'm saying like,
no. You're 100%. I'm saying I didn't want you giving away who it was.
My bad. Well, I think everyone knew.
Well, yeah, I think so too. But you leave deniability. I don't know if I'll cut that out or not. Probably not. I'm just going to leave it in. Everybody's watching us go through this process. How we do some of this sometimes. But the bottom line is that yes, 100%. And should they do that? No, they should not do that. Stay away from social media. It's not productive. You're trying if you need the external factors, if you want to go read how everybody's saying how good, great, and wonderful you are, and that is what's going to motivate you, you've got a big problem in this style of in this game.
I agree.
Or if you're buying into all the negative that people are saying about you, or you want to know that as well, that means A, you care what people think, but B, that's not going to help you. You're never going to go and read all. If you either don't care what people think, and so the criticism bothers you none, or you go seek out, you want to know what people are saying about you, and it's absolutely going to affect you. So, I mean,
you would do a whole show on the ins and outs of mental health on social media, because it's like, it's so bad in general, and like, I'm not even coming down on the fans for like.
It's going to happen.
Plenty about Seth McLaughlin, to be honest. I've said plenty about other players, and like,
why do you think that it is that we can do that with everyone but Jalen Milroe? That's the only thing that's ever bothered me.
That's fair. It's a fair question. I think the issue I had with the other player was there were balls being rolled back at his feet, and then balls being snapped over his head in crucial situations. The first touchdown of the year, first touchdown of the year was a bad snap. The last play of the year was a bad snap. And then when I heard his dad go on Feinbaum and say that the sound of the claps were different between Bryce and Jalen, like claps all of a sudden had an accent, like you were from Wetumpka versus Washington. Like that was frustrating for me. I will.
Wait, who said that?
Right. That was his dad on Feinbaum.
I don't know that I ever heard that.
But like I will also say I have been one that has been like constantly defending Jalen Milroe, and I don't think that like at this point, like I think that wholeheartedly I was wrong about a lot of stuff with Jalen Milroe. I just kept thinking he would play his way out of it. I will maintain that his resume, the stuff that he did, he is the only reason you beat Georgia twice. He is the reason that like you like beat the brakes off of LSU twice. But at the same time, you make the argument he's why you lost to Oklahoma. You make the argument he's why you lost to Michigan. Michigan is the most clear one, because it's like you just didn't do things to take you out of that. Moving past just the Milroe stuff, the bigger question I have moving forward, because by all means, Milroe should be gone. And let's also be clear, all these idiots that are saying how like he's not going to get drafted, he's going to go work at McDonald's and blah, blah. If you don't think that an NFL franchise is going to do some stupid shit when he gets into his underwear in Indianapolis and participates in the Underwear Olympics at the NFL Combine and runs a 4.3 and throws the ball a mile, whether it's accurate or not, he will get drafted. He will get drafted high, and there's a whole bunch of tape to show why he probably shouldn't be drafted high, but it'll happen either way.
What I will say, it's kind of like I do think that it's possible that if he declares for the NFL draft, it looks like you're getting after somebody right now, Chris. And I don't turn the camera off. Let us see it. Chris is in dad mode with the dogs right now. Anyways, when you're talking about like going through the evaluation process of Milroe, you have to. It's distracting, but not in a bad way. It's funny. it does feel like that we're going to reach a point from an NFL draft perspective where, we saw this with Desmond Ridder. People were talking about him being a potential day one pick, falls to the third round. Malik Willis, potential number one overall pick. The guy's got a rocket arm. The only thing that cat didn't really have, other than, there was some mental processing, some of the question marks that we have for Jalen, or some of the questions that we have for Malik Willis, was the height problem. He was only like 6 foot. But he was a guy people were talking about, hey, he could end up actually being number one overall, but he's going to be, like a high first round draft pick, falls to the third round. Will Levis, going to go in the top 10. People start talking about him being, the third quarterback take in top 10. Yeah, and the same team that drafted Malik Willis in the third round, the very next year drafted him in the second round. He fell out of the first round. So it's like I could see that style of player. Milroe kind of falls into that, where there's some mobility, there's some things that you really like. I wouldn't be shocked if he went in the first round because, toolsy. But here's the thing. I actually compare his game in some ways to Anthony Richardson. But the difference is, and people's got to understand this, he's not 6'4", 250 pounds. He doesn't run, on top of being that size, run a 4.3 something. He's very fast, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ran sub 4.4, to be honest with you. But he's 6'2", 225. Like, he's a big body guy. And here's the thing. At one point this season, the offense seemed to be built around his physicality, and then he stopped being physical. Like, it was like once they did that, he stopped being like a physical runner. It was so strange to watch. But, you talk about I've always found it fascinating. Fans will say Mac Jones single-handedly lost Alabama the Iron Bowl in 2019. And he did have one terrible throw that was a pick six. The other pick six was fluky. I never blamed him for that. I will never blame him for that, and I wouldn't have blamed anybody else that threw that pass.
Would we have gone up 11 if Najee doesn't go behind his back trying to
I tell you what, it is exactly. But here's the thing. He would get blamed for being single-handedly the reason they won that game, but I think he balled out in that game otherwise.
Yeah.
He was
incredible. 35 yards.
Yeah, but then and this is why I defended Jalen Milroe in like the Vanderbilt game, even though the consistency factor with the offense, because of the style in which he plays, they couldn't get any sort of consistency going on the ground. And he had the strip sack, and yes, he had the pick six, and you can technically put a lot of what happened based off of the amount of points they lost by. You can say Jalen Milroe's responsible, but in that type of game, I defended him the same way I did Mac Jones in that Iron Bowl, because it's like, did he make mistakes like everybody else? Sure, his are more polarizing, his are more exposable mistakes where you can point to it, but he also did some really, really good things in that football game. And when you score that many points, you should win against Vanderbilt. I'm sorry. So
no, agreed. And I don't disagree on that. I will say also the greatest piece of trash talk I think I've ever received in my life was I was in Tahoe this summer at a wedding, and there's a bunch of Auburn fans there, and this guy came up and he was talking. We were at the rehearsal dinner where you had to be at the rehearsal dinner because Allie was in the wedding, and then everyone else got to come to the after party, like the welcome party or whatever. And so we're all sitting there, and within minutes of everyone else showing up, these two Auburn fans were just up my ass about talking shit. And one of them made a comment about how Mac Jones sucks and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Mac Jones is pretty good. He actually, put up 335 yards and 4 touchdowns against Auburn. And he goes, actually, he had 6 touchdowns against Auburn. Just 2 of them were to Auburn. And I was like, oh, that's tough. That's good.
Yeah, it was a good response.
I will say, I don't think that. I just going back to what I meant to say earlier before I got sidetracked was the thing with Milroe. It sucks the way it ended. He clearly is not the same quarterback he was at the first start of the season. Just like what do you call it? Kirk Cousins was with the Falcons at the end of the. Oh wow, Vinny Sunseri just got named defensive coordinator, Jack State. Pretty cool. Anyway, but Kirk Cousins fell off the map in that 5-game stretch for the Falcons this year, and it felt like a very similar situation with Jalen Milroe because it's he just could not do anything right. He just could not do. It wasn't the yips. It just he could not do anything right. And you could see, like, all throughout the game on Saturday, just like even in the Auburn game, he was fine through the air, but he had so many weird fumbles, like the fumble he had around midfield in the third quarter, when it's like, dude, if you cut outside or just cut it up and stop waiting for this block in front of you, you'll outrun everybody on the field. Instead, he waited until somebody came from behind, stripped the ball, and then he fumbles. And it's like, this sucks, man. Stop with the you're inappropriate. And so this whole thing though, I will say, going into the offseason, I know you well enough to know what you're doing. In the
I wasn't doing nothing.
What worries me is this coaching staff has to do some serious reflection of how to get better. And this is not me blaming anyone. Listen, I said this to you in July. I thought this was a 9-3 team. Did not think this is how they're going to get there, but it's a 9-win team. There's plenty of things that are positive taken the next year, and it's only going into year 2 under Kalen DeBoer. That being said, if Kalen DeBoer is going to come in and be the successor to Nick Saban, be as successful as you want him to be, there's a lot of self-inventory you're going to have to do within those 4 walls of that building and figure out how to make things work. Because if Keelan Russell comes in as a true freshman, he's your starter, that's already like, whew, you got a true freshman starter. Maybe it's Ty Simpson. I don't know. Maybe it's Austin Mack. But like either way, you've got to figure out a way that offense, because the thing I was most confident in, man, I told my buddy Isaac this repeatedly at the start of the year. I was like, you know what? Secondary is concerned. You lost 12 guys total between the portal and the NFL draft and or graduation. The defense is going to be the same under Saban. Like, you got a lot of work to do on the back end, and the defense not going to be the same. But here's the thing: I do know that team's going to score 40 points a game. Like, the offense is clearly going to score 40 points a game, and then you come out and you score 41 against Kirby Smart in Georgia, and it's like, of course they did. And you look at the end of the season where you put up 3 against Oklahoma, you put up 13 against Michigan, and those are. Michigan's a good defense, but like, Jesus, man, like that's
with the guys they had out. And don't get me wrong, they still were a good defense. Like, I mean, they had a lot of key players out, but they still there's talent, and that defense had depth. So you just had to rely a little bit more on that depth, just exclusively that depth, and you didn't have as much depth as you did when all those other guys were around. But you still had an effective defense, and I think Alabama learned that the hard way. I know we've spent a ton of time talking about like Milroe and everything else. And I do want to add that it's like with anybody else. Like, people think you flip flop on somebody. It's like, oh man, you were praising them then. It's like, maybe I just take exactly what I'm getting and I react to that. So if they're playing really well and doing really well, I'm totally willing to praise a guy and say he's playing really great. Like, he's playing phenomenal. But when he's not playing well, I say, hey, he's not playing very well. He's not doing very well right now. Like, shouldn't that be what we do? But people will say, like, oh, but a month ago you were talking about him being in the Heisman race. It's like, because he was doing Heisman
playing at a Heisman level.
Yeah, I don't want, and then he wasn't. Now what you wouldn't have seen from me is him not playing at a Heisman level. I mean, being like, he's playing at a Heisman level. Then it would have been like, what are you doing? But it's like, sometimes maybe we can just take how a guy's performing and say exactly what he's doing. We just be honest about it. We talk about it. I've never understood why that's a thing.
We're going to be wrong every once in a while. I was wrong about sticking to Jalen Milroe.
You're wrong. You were wrong about Cam Ward. I mean, you're wrong all the time.
I was not wrong about Cam Ward.
You were not
wrong about Cam Ward at all. But I was wrong about the Jalen Milroe stuff, and I think that, like, I don't think I'm wrong about the hate that he gets. I don't think I'm wrong that, like, we don't need to have some of the fan displays that we're seeing publicly. But I think, I think his time needs to be at an end here at Alabama, and I've defended him for a long time. But it's clearly the play, like that level of play against Georgia, you can't just cross your fingers and hope it's going to happen again. And I'm totally fine with that.
That seems to be an outlier.
Yeah, it does 1,000%. The thing that I think one of the things I hate most in social media now, and it is, I'm just going to put my boomer hat on here.
Totally.
Actually, I don't want you to see the front of that. The boomer hat here. This like generation below us, and the entire, like, everything has to be something on social media. So it's like, if you say something that I don't agree with, that's bait, that's engagement farming, that's whatever. And it's like, no, man, we just have different opinions. And I have to actually, like, give them for my job professionally, or I don't have a job. Like it's my literal job to be right 60% of the time, but to be giving some sort of opinion on it 100% of the time. Like, you don't just throw shit at the wall on social media and be like, that guy sucks because he's just like we're not all big game boomer. We're not all just throwing up like shitty graphics just to get attention. Like, this is, I feel bad now because I've been throwing up some great graphics for attention over the past couple days. But you know what I mean? Like that's the thing that bothers me the most is like if you have a disagreement, like there's been plenty of times that I was wrong this season about Jalen Milroe, willing to admit it, hate that it was, but I mean, like, yeah, like we're gonna be wrong. It doesn't mean that we're just trying to like push some narrative or I'll have to tell you something off air that when I made the comment about that thing I muted and somebody was like, are you insinuating that people don't want him to start because of XYZ? And I was like, no, not at all. It was something I had like people just oh man, I don't know if it's bored because of spring or from Christmas break or what, but people need to get back to work and not be so angry.
Well, a couple of really quick newsy things. LT Overton has said that he's going to be coming back next year. That is absolutely huge. We've been saying for a hot minute, the guy's got to learn how to finish more. He's a complete game wrecker, pretty consistently, but he's just got to finish more. If he can do that, then I'm telling you, he's going to be that disruptive presence alongside James Smith, who was incredible in the bowl game.
Yeah.
That's one guy that I really wanted to go back and watch, and the guy was an ox against the run. And when you look, I think he had 11 pressures this season. I think like 8 of those came at 9 of those came in his last 7 games. Huge. And so he every single week he went like 7 or 8 straight games with having a pressure, at least one. He was in a rotational role. Obviously, that role kind of expanded a little bit. He's been playing roughly about between 20 and 30 snaps the last 3 or 4 games, and he really started to show something here at the end of the season. Kelby Collins has got plenty of upside. I think Tim Keenan is a good, steady interior defensive lineman, but getting LT Overton back, we don't know what's going to happen. Keon Keeley saw some action in the bowl game. You got Jordan Renaud. We don't know what's going to happen with Jamarian Latham. Wouldn't be shocked if he was gone. I mean, the thinking that they're going to have LT Overton, Jamarian Latham, Kelby Collins, Jordan Renaud, Keon Keeley, I just don't think that's going to happen. So
Keeley looks like a little bit of a burst coming off the bench.
He's always had it, I think they were looking for a little bit more consistency with the physicality.
Yeah.
They wanted to get his body right and get him to a place where he could really do the things that they need that man in position to do. He's taking a little bit of time. The coaching staff's really high on him. And then also Jahad Campbell, as expected, did declare for the NFL draft.
There were people in the press box saying that the Bama graphic designer was making the graphic in the press box, which not great.
I did not hear that.
I got a text from somebody that was like, "Hey, just a heads up, this guy's making this. He's making the graphic right now." And I was like,
"That didn't." I want people to know that doesn't indicate anything.
What does the fine print say? Does it say he's coming back? He's like, no, there's just giant NFL sign.
I mean, but there's still this is what we do. A lot of times, you'll get a tip, some information, and you'll know that a guy's about to commit, and you'll go ahead and record the video, and then he doesn't. Maybe he ends up spoiling a surprise on you, or maybe it's like we don't know what's going to happen. Like, is Bryce Young going to declare? Is he not going to declare? Well, you go in and you go ahead and write a shell of an article for both.
Yeah,
and that way you're kind of ahead of it. So seeing somebody that went, even though I'm sure they probably did know, I think everybody kind of knew.
Yeah.
He might have been making it after that injury too. Like when Jihad went out, it's like, this guy's
right.
like, oh, definitely not risking nothing now.
And good for Jihad too, because that kid has given his all for Alabama. He played in the bowl game. We didn't have to. That kid's been fantastic. Yep. We'd love to see him. I'm excited, man. I think there's so much to talk about this offseason. There's so much that coming in that I think that this felt like this. It felt like this breakup you weren't expecting, kind of. Shut up. This I'm gonna get real sad here for 12 minutes. No, I'm kidding. No, the Saban thing was it was surprising to a lot of people. I remember somebody telling me on LSU weekend that was close to the family or in the family that was like, you better enjoy this while you can. And then I was like, well, maybe he forgot. Maybe he's going to be so upset that at the end of the season they lost that he's going to stick around. And that obviously didn't happen, but he left, and it's like you have to that first month, man, of like losing. Like every day I woke up and I was like, please, it's like peeking out over the covers, like, please God, tell me Caleb Downs didn't leave. Please God, tell me Jaheim Otis hadn't left yet. And I think that you finally weathered the storm to the first half. Now it feels like the fresh start that you want as a program. It's like, let's see what happens. Let's see who they can put in place. You've got some guys that at least want to be there. I'm excited about Jalen Mbakwe. I'm really excited about Jalen Hill. Ryan Williams coming back. The offensive line has to get better. I hope they will. Just a lot of positives, man. A lot of positives.
Yeah, I mean, you got several returning starters along your offensive line. Caden Proctor, he is only a sophomore, so he's not going to be leaving. Parker Brailsford, Elijah Pritchett. Don't think he's going anywhere unless, transfer portal, I guess, is always an option.
Right.
But the assumption is he's not going to be leaving. Jaden Roberts he dealt with injuries all year. Highly doubt he ends up leaving. So you're probably getting, and all those guys are going to be upperclassmen, junior, seniors, like third, fourth, or fifth year guys. So, you got a lot of talent coming in. Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, so you got a couple of others. Yeah, so you've got that, but then also like the storyline we're going to be talking about. Is it the freshman phenom, Keelan Jones? Is it Ty Simpson, the guy who's been around, the former 5-star himself? What does Austin Mack do? Really exciting player.
Is it Peyton Thorne?
Say what? Hey, what I will say about him, Kalen DeBoer saw him for a year at Washington, and when you talk about fitting the system, he knows he fits his system because he wanted to bring him with him. Austin Mack, for sure.
I'm talking about. I made a joke about Peyton Thorne, but yeah,
I know. I just immediately steered it back.
I think you're right, man. I think you're like. I tell you what. He also did that knowing full well that he was going to come in and try to figure out how to keep Julian Sayin, who's one of the highest ranked recruits.
I don't think he cared to keep Julian Sayin.
I don't think he did either.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think he it's not that he didn't think nothing of Julian Sayin. He just thought, I know this guy can run my system. I know he's got a lot of upside. I love him for the future. And he came in, and it's like, I'm bringing this guy in, Julian Sayin. I mean, if you want to leave, that's fine. And that's what ended up happening. But so there's the quarterback battle. My point in saying all that is to say the quarterback battle is really intriguing. You're looking at the receivers, and it's like, man, you got Isaiah Horton coming in. How does he fit in? Ryan Williams' growth and development.
Right.
The defense, James Smith starting to ball out a little bit. LT Overton's coming back. Where does Kelby Collins fit in? Cam Calhoun. The secondary finally got a little bit of experience, and you're going to be having some returning guys. So my point is that last offseason, because there was so much transition and change with Nick Saban retiring, it was a very intriguing, interesting offseason. This, to me, is going to be every bit as much as far as from an intrigue and a storyline perspective, mostly because you have that quarterback element. That always really helps drive things in the conversation and who's going to win. And I am very much in the camp of Ty Simpson should be the assumed starter right now. But I will say, I'm going to be pulling for Keelan Russell too. Like if Ty Simpson wins, that's phenomenal.
We did with Bryce Young in 2020, so we all.
I remember I told everybody to sit and wait for a year, and he's going to be really good. And then that's not one to. If you want to call me out on a missed quarterback battle, I predicted Ty Simpson before the 2023 season. So
I was kidding with you. First off, second off, you were spot on about Bryce Young. I remember sitting there looking at you, and that's the Miami game, and I was trying. We were in the press box, and I was trying not to be as unprofessional as I am, and he hit JMO. He hit JMO on that 94-yard touchdown. And I just remember looking at you, and I go, "We are so fucking good at football." And you were like, "Yeah,
yeah, that's exactly what you said." Exactly after you had taken 3 Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches when you're only supposed to get 1, 4.
We're supposed to get 1.
Yeah,
brother, I got groceries that day. It was fantastic.
Anyways, we appreciate it. Yeah, let's end on that, I guess. Chris getting groceries. We appreciate everybody for listening in. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about all this stuff. A lot of decisions coming up as far as the NFL draft and what that means for the roster. And we're going to kind of break down like an exit point for the roster and get on over to covercrimson.com too, the message board. We're going to be doing all that. My snap count observations are going to be coming out starting tomorrow from this Michigan game. We're going to start with I don't know which side of the football I'm going to start with. I've been watching the defense, so I might start there. But that's going to be the next 2 days after today. And then probably early next week, I'll be looking at like the season long and kind of trends and things that we noticed and things that happened, and guys to be looking out for next year as a result of some of those trends. All of that we're going to be talking about over at covercrimson.com. Yeah. So if you haven't already, go subscribe and hop in on the conversations. Always great talks with everybody on there. Chris, I appreciate you, brother, and we will have to do this again soon.
Sounds good, brother. Talk to you then.
See you, boys.